Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Alino and Aaron Zaretsky reporting from Vibe 105 with a Sports Vibe Talk segment where we're going to be talking about professional wrestling today and some wrestling fandom. To help us out, we're happy to be joined by our guest. You've seen him on Instagram, you've seen him on Dash Radio. He runs the Wrestling Classic Instagram page. He's Justin Dhillon. How you doing, Justin?
I'm good. How are you guys on this lovely morning? I'm coffeeless, but I'm good, man. How are you guys?
Doing great.
I'm
Aaron, how you
okay,
doing?
doing well.
Doing well, doing well. That's always good.
So yeah, with COVID now, how you been doing? Like, how's your family doing?
Everything's been pretty decent. A lot of the same, not obviously there's some stuff, but a lot of the same stuff been going on. Um, I'm a homebody as it is, but I didn't realize how much I did like doing the small things, like going to the store freely or going to the gym, like how much that leaving the house for those type of situations meant to me, to my mental health. Because sitting at home every day, like now obviously the lockdown laws are a little bit less and you're free to do more, but for that little period it was like it's kind of draining. Like you can only watch so much TV or play. Like I'm not a video game guy no more, like I was when I was younger. So I played like some video games, but it was hard. It was hard. Right before the pandemic started, I actually was in California in February 5th, no 16th to the 27th. I was in LA, and I finalized the Dash deal. I was doing shows. I was doing other people's shows. I was on the Swings and Misses show and the Jenna Ben show, and I was doing all this stuff. And I was like, bang, 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 bang. And I came home, and the world shut down. So it was really weird. But it's been all right. How about you guys?
I've been holding up okay. Aaron, how about
Yeah,
you?
same here, same here. Just take it one day at a time, and it's still kind of surreal that something that's actually happened because it's like, pandemic. You see it on TV, right, in movies, right, but for it to actually happen in real life, it's just like, wow, it's just so crazy. And now it's almost been 3 months of this whole quarantine.
Well, do you guys think there's going to be a second wave that with the fact that everyone kind of just went back to normal life now and everyone's just hanging out and, obviously in the States we got a lot of protests where people are near each other and stuff like, do you think we're going to get a huge second wave? Because I don't know. I feel like everyone's just like, oh, the moment's done. We're all going to the beach and hanging out. And it's like, yo, like it's still a thing kind of, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible because now, especially all these sports leagues coming back, the playoffs are all going to be starting at the end of July. We got August too for the NBA, so hopefully it can be done safely. Everything could be
Let me
returned
ask you
safely.
guys a question if you don't mind.
Yeah, no.
How have you guys been enjoying wrestling during this pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's been doing really well. Like I know for WWE, they kind of been struggling overall with their like Raws and SmackDown shows, but AEW, like to me, AEW has been doing really well with the limited fans, and then with the pay per view that they had recently. And yeah, it's just because initially when this started, right, like you watch WrestleMania and like, okay, there's nobody in the stands, like will it be the same kind of thing, right? So could it took some time to adjust, but overall, I've been enjoying it.
I found it really hard for a few months, like maybe a month there, for watching Raw and SmackDown after WrestleMania. Like right after WrestleMania, for like a good month, I found it really hard to watch. And I think it was just because they had like that zero audience, and it was just like I almost felt like they should have taken a month off after WrestleMania. Like you did the show, we're glad you did it. It was great. Like just let's take a break because everything that happened after was just kind of like it was hard to watch. I will agree that I think AEW's been doing a great job. I think them having the wrestlers in the crowd and working with their minimum roster and the minimum audience, like they found ways to make it work. Obviously, the WWE has a lot more eyes on them. They're like Disney, they're like McDonald's. They're the brand name that when people talk about wrestling, oh, that WWE stuff, the WWF stuff, like they got way more
Yeah.
eyes on them. They got shareholders and stuff, so they probably were taking more precautions. But it was hard to watch, man. It was hard to watch Raw and SmackDown for like a solid month. But that's just me, maybe. I don't know. Like leading to the Money in the Bank, I was like, this is brutal.
Itself was kind of like I thought it'd be much better that pay per view, but then you had the Money in the Bank ladder matches, and it was just so like not what I expected it to be. And I think the pay per view was like 2.5 hours, which was like such a super short pay per view, and just it was
Weird
kind
for
of rough.
them.
Yeah, it was. Especially now that they had the plexiglass around, kind of has that hockey feel.
Yeah.
Get more people in there. I agree with you there. It is something different. It took some time to adjust to it. Now them being able to do it a little bit safely. I agree there. But Aaron, you can kick it off.
Yeah. So just first off, you have you mentioned earlier you have your own Dash Radio, which primarily focuses on wrestling. How did that come about?
So the TWC show was something where, so I've previously done a couple of podcasts. Like I think back in 2015, I tried doing my own called The Wrestling. I just called it The Wrestling Classic. It was just The Wrestling Classic. And at that point, I was just kind of, it wasn't like, it just, 2015, 2016, it mainly was in 2016. 2016 was when I actually saw like opportunity with the page. I'm like, oh, like I went to Dallas for WrestleMania and people were wearing Wrestling Classic shirts and like happy to meet me and stuff. And back then, like I never showed my face. People didn't know my name. I was like very low key, and I was like, oh, like I need to start owning this. And I started a podcast back then, and I interviewed the likes of like Al Phantasmo and the Singh brothers and Nicole Matthews and like the independent wrestlers that were here, like Kyle O'Reilly. Like I did all these interviews with those guys. I did interviews with Heath Slater. Like I got lucky in a couple places and stuff. And then I kind of just stopped doing that. And that was my fault. There was a lot of consistency. I wasn't a huge fan of editing. I didn't know if that was the route I wanted to go. And like a couple years later, Danny from Florida hit me up and he wanted to do he wanted to do a podcast. He's like, Justin, I'll take care of all the editing. I'll do everything. He's like, you just come on there, talk, and I'll take care of everything. And I'm like, okay, sweet. Like that's a sweet deal. So we came up with the Squared Circle DNA show, which went for a good year and a half, I think. And it was really, really good. We would talk about different topics every week. Tried to avoid talking about what's going on now, but it was more like growing up a wrestling fan. You know, we do like a Shawn Michaels episode or like a Macho Man episode, or we'd talk about old matches or events. And occasionally we talk about what was going on if it was like something crazy. But that was really fun, and we did that for a bit. But with that one, I think the biggest thing was time differences. He was out in the East Coast like you guys. So he was 3 hours ahead of me in Florida, and it was trying to find the right time to record that worked for both of us. Plus, also the fact that I think he started being interested in doing things more than just wrestling, and I just wanted to do wrestling. And when his focus went to other things, like I want to do sports and I want to do movies and this and that, and I want to do all this stuff, I'm like, well, this isn't going to work because I think you're more passionate about that stuff than wrestling. He kind of got bitter through wrestling because we got to do some really cool things. Like we got Media Road, a Ring of Honor, New Japan at Madison Square Garden and on WrestleMania weekend. We got some really cool sponsors. We got to interview some really cool people. But it just, I think he wanted to do things outside of wrestling as well because I think he was a little bitter towards wrestling. I don't know if that's true. Hopefully he doesn't quote me on that. But I just felt like we got a lot of no's that he kind of was like, well, F it. Like I'm getting yes from the sports people. I'm getting yes from these people. Like I'm going to go do that. And I'm like, okay, then you go do that. And in between all the shows, like I made, you know, I had people that were trying to help me out and look out for me, and they let me do interviews with them just randomly, whether they were like Instagram live streams and stuff. For example, like I did a live streamed conversation with Rikishi, Sean Mooney, Darren Young, aka Fred Rosser. I did an interview with Sheamus, who was very headset of like, no, I want you to come do an interview with me, and then I'm gonna try to get you to Media Row and all this stuff. I got to do an interview with Jinder when he was here in Vancouver. That's a story in itself because my camera guy never recorded it properly the entire time, and I had no idea because I was live streaming on my phone. My other buddy was live streaming on Cleo Thomas's Slick Living Snapchat TV, and we had a camera guy, and the entire time he wasn't recording. And then at the end, I'm like, bro, did you get that? And he's like, oh, you didn't tell me. And I'm like, so the only version of it I had was my live stream version, but it was in a gym, so it was so loud and clanging and banging, and it looked good when you're live streaming, but when you tried to save it or save the audio, it sounded like crap because it wasn't on an actual video camera, and it also looked like crap because it wasn't on an actual video camera. So that was the Jinder story, but like, so I got opportunities like that, and then I knew that I still wanted to do a podcast, but it was just more of how are we going to how am I going to do this and where am I going to do it? And I got really like set on like having a studio and recording it from a studio every week, because that way it becomes a situation where like, you know, you have to go there, you have to record it, takes you out of your element, out of your room and anything else that's going on, and you sit there and you record. And I had a ton of weddings last summer, and I mentioned it to my friend. He's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, man, if I could just like have a studio and I can record the show, because I'm like, having audio is great, but I need video, because when people look me up, I want them to be able to see me, know that this is the person. when it's just audio, sometimes they don't know that, you know. And I know from the statistics, more people probably like to listen to it. But when I reach out to WWE or reach out to different companies, I want them to Google and see me. And they're like, oh, this is the guy. And that was the biggest thing about video for me. So he linked me up with this kid named Sonu who had this YouTube channel called The Vibe, similarity. But I mean, coincidentally. But then he had a YouTube channel called The Vibe where he was working with influencers and creative people, and he did like a bunch of music videos and stuff, and he built a studio in his dad's studio, which was for a bigger studio for like Indian shows, but he built one just podcast studio, and we started using that. And I know for a fact, like, I can sit here and talk forever, but I like having a co-host because I like bouncing off of someone, and it's just better chemistry. And I was like, one of my really close friends, one of my best friends from here, like, he's a huge wrestling fan. I watch a lot of pay-per-views at his house. We're always texting. Like, when he went to school in Scotland and stuff, because he's becoming a lawyer, like, we'd always talk to each other on Mondays and stuff over Raw and stuff. Like, we'll be talking to each other on WhatsApp, and, like, we're like, yeah, this and that. So I'm like, we always had this back and forth. And I also know we don't agree on a lot of things. Like, we don't like a lot of the same people. Like, his idea of what wrestling is and my idea is different. I'm like a storyline character guy. Like, he actually likes the wrestling and this and that. So I'm like, yo, this will be a funny show because we don't get, like, we get along. Like, we're really close. But when it comes to wrestling, like, we butt heads. So I asked him, like, yo, like, do you want to be my co-host and let's do this? And so I asked Devin, and he was game. And then we started recording the shows. And when I was doing the Squared Circle DNA show, I actually moved to California for 6 months in 2018. And as I was living down there, I just, like, was connecting with people, and, like, I'm really good friends with Cleo Thomas. A lot of you might remember him from the Disney movie Holes. He was Zero in the Disney movie Holes. For those of you who are older, you might actually have seen him in shows like Shameless and all these other shows. He's an actor, he's a singer, he's a content creator, all that fun stuff. He does Twitch and everything. But me and him got really close because he's a huge wrestling fan, and he's followed my page forever. And he invited me out to a celebrity basketball game when I was down, to a 3-on-3 celebrity basketball game. I got to meet, like, Chili and Frankie J and all these other people and these content creators, and it was really, really cool. And I was, like, in the VIP section, so, like, he did that for me. So I messaged him after. And I was like, yo, because I was with my cousins that live in California anyways. They were, like, my drivers the entire time. I'm like, let us take you out for dinner. Where should we pick you up from? He's like, oh, yeah, cool. And he shot me an address. Like, yeah, we'll go on this day. So we get ready. I go to this address, and it wasn't a house. I'm like, where are we? And it was Dash Radio. And then we go in, and he threw me on his podcast on Dash Radio. And that's when I initially made the connection. Since then, they wanted me to do a show on their station. It's just the one with Danny didn't work out, and there was one girl there that named by Jen who kept saying, "No, I want you on here. I want you on here. I want you on here." And the conversation stopped for a bit, and then it got brought back up again because I reached out to them. I'm like, I'm doing a new show. These are our numbers. It's on YouTube. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio. It's all over the place. And I'm like, what we basically do is every week we recap everything that happened. We give our opinions. We talk about it. And every once in a while we just talk about old school stuff too, because we're both old school fans. And these are the videos on YouTube. So, like, the first 32 episodes or 33 episodes are on YouTube in video form. And then the rest of them since then have been on all audio. And I'm hoping to do video form again, even if it's like this over Skype or StreamYard. We've talked about it. But yeah, and then the Dash, when I went to California this past February, I went there. We finalized the deal. I was put on some other 2 shows. They just moved locations on Hollywood Boulevard now. And they're like, why don't you just do a show live from here? So I think it was like episode 31. I interviewed Blake Troop, Bulletproof Blake Troop, who's a MMA fighter, wrestler, and also a commentator for NWA Hollywood down there, or Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, I think they call it now. And I interviewed him in the front window on Hollywood Boulevard, and I was officially on Dash Radio. And that is the very long story of the TWC show. Yeah.
Long but good. Good story.
Long-winded. I was like, man. I just want to explain because I think the thing that happens to me a lot is a lot of people think that they just see where I am now, what I'm doing now, but they don't realize all, like, the trials and tribulations. Yeah. Like, the fact that, like, I've had this page since 2014. I've had the door slammed in my face a million times. I still get the door slammed in my face a million times. But I keep trucking, and cool things keep happening. And I just think, if I can share how long that took me to get there to make that happen, and from the first podcast all the way now, it shows people that, like, listen, you're probably going to do a bunch of stuff that might not work, but if you keep trying and you're actually passionate about it, it'll work out for the best, you know?
So like
True,
this
true.
page, right? Like this page that you started, you said 2014, you started it, like, was that just sort of a hobby just to start a wrestling page, or did you even
Oh,
like,
100%. It was just a hobby. I always joke around about the story. I'm like, I was working, I think at that time I was still working. I was working I was selling cell phones for Virgin Mobile and Bell, and I was just getting into banking. And I thought, like, at that point in my life, I thought my career trajectory was going to be like, I'm going to go into banking, and I'm going to be a financial advisor and do all. And I did. I worked in banking from 2014 all the way up until 2018. Like, I was a banker. I was giving out I was lending and giving
Oh
out hedge
wow.
funds and stuff. You know what I mean? That's what I was doing. But I started the Instagram page because I was sitting here one day in Canada in 2014, and I was watching the Wrestling Classic, and I always joke around. I'm like, because it's not even a joke, because it's true, but it's also like, it sounds so stupid. What I tell people, we always laugh about. Like, my ex-girlfriend didn't want me to have Instagram. We were kind of in a toxic relationship. She had some trust issues. A lot of girls followed my personal page, and I deactivated my personal page. I think I deactivated my personal page in like February or June or something, 2014 or something, and then I started this page in February 2014, and I was like, well, this is how I keep up with wrestling, because I stopped reading dirt sheets. I wasn't like really that guy that was on the rumor websites. Like, I kept up with wrestling through social media, through Twitter and Instagram and whatnot. And with Twitter, I'm like, Twitter, to even till this day, I think Twitter, the wrestling community, is very negative, very smarky, very know-it-all-y, very complaining, and I didn't want to be a part of that. So I'm like, I went on Instagram. I'm like, what was the wrestling community on Instagram? It was role play accounts. It was fan pages for like the Bella Twins and the Shield and stuff back then. It was pages that focused on independent wrestling. There were meme pages, like obsessed with wrestling and meme gene and stuff. And then you had your maybe 2 or 3 classic wrestling pages. I think those classic wrestling, those $1 Million Champion, and I think 1_wrestler or something. 2 out of those 3 have blocked me because I came in and blew everybody out of the water. But then I just made the Wrestling Classic, and I started posting old school pictures. But how I can tell you I didn't know it was anything until 2016 is because I always joke around and say 2014, 2015 was like my attitude era, because I posted anything and everything, because I went to my personal page, I blocked all my friends and family. I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't tell anybody my name. I didn't tell anybody my identity. I was the Wrestling Classic, and it wasn't until 2016 I was like, oh, like, there's actually an opportunity for me to do something in the wrestling business, or even like do things in the wrestling business as a fan.
Oh wow, that's pretty good. Nice story there. And the journey, right? The journey is like, the old saying, right? The journey's better than the destination. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, like all the trials and tribulations that you went through, and now, the page and your radio show is blooming. And now just let's get into the wrestling. So, WWE at WWE Backlash, Edge and Randy Orton will be fighting, and it's being billed as the greatest wrestling match ever. Now, there have been great wrestling matches over the years, and whenever you have the debate of greatest wrestling match, it's always subjective. So why do you think WWE is adding pressure to Edge and Orton with the billing of greatest wrestling match ever?
It's just marketing. They're trying to get people to tune in. You know what I mean? There's not that much wrestling. This is going to be the greatest match ever. And you do have 2 guys that are very capable of having a really good match. You know what I mean? They could have a really good match. Is it going to be the greatest wrestling match ever? I think that's putting too much pressure on it. If they sat there and they said, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25, this is booked as the greatest wrestling match ever, I don't know if it would be, even that match would be able to live up to that. I don't know if Steamboat and Savage would have been able to live up to that if it was built out ahead of time. I don't know if Hart and Austin, which is my favorite match from WrestleMania 13, would have lived up from that if it was built. I think it's tough. I don't think they're gonna have a bad match. I think they put a lot of pressure on them to make it something that it might not be able to be. I will say this though, and I was telling this to Larry, aka a wrestling historian, on Instagram yesterday. He posted like a 5-way that happened in like 2017. It was like Finn and Bray and Roman and Seth and Samoa Joe and like a 6-pack battle or something like that for the #1 contention of Extreme Rules. And I'm like, what's so weird about current wrestling, like modern day wrestling in the last, I'll say like 10 years maybe, what, it was 2020, okay, like the last 15 years, is we get so much wrestling on a weekly basis. Like, we get so many pay-per-views, so many weekly shows with good wrestling. There's always like every other week on a Raw, even when there was an audience, like we'll get like a really good match on Raw, or we'll get a really good match on SmackDown, or you know what I mean? And like this problem that we have today is that we have so much access to wrestling too, like independent wrestling and Progress and PWG and beyond. Like, we want to watch it, like we can watch it. We're so spoiled with so much good wrestling that there's like so many good matches, but I don't remember all of them because there's too many now. It's not like back when I was like 1997, like you remember Austin and Brad, or like you remember this match at Fatal 4, because there's only so many pay-per-views, there's only so many shows, and it was easy to narrow it down. Now I'm like, there's a Raw every week, there's a SmackDown every week, there's an NXT every week, there's NXT takeovers, there's 12 pay-per-views a month. Now there's Saudi shows, there's New Japan, there's Wrestle Kingdoms, there's Danoku, there's all those other events. And there's Ring of Honor, then there's PWG, then there's AEW, then there's Progress, then there's ICW, there's all this wrestling. Oh, look what David Starr is doing over here. Like, well, Seth Rollins and Andrade had a great match over here. And like, you don't remember. Like, if there was a really great match that happened on Raw 2 weeks ago that we were all like, whoa, that was a sick match, I can't tell you what match that was this week. Like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Because we're spoiled with too much good wrestling. Like, there's too much wrestling that was so spoiled with good matches. Like, I remember, like, I think recently they said they're going to ban suicide dives. I'm like, thank God, because I felt like there was a point where every Monday Night Raw, before we hit to a commercial break, Seth Rollins or Dean Ambrose was doing a suicide dive. Like, it's used to the point where it doesn't even matter no more. Like, I remember when Bret did a suicide dive on PCO, and it was like a big deal. Or Bret did a suicide dive on the Undertaker after that cage match. I was like, whoa, now everyone's doing it. It's not cool no more. And when everyone's doing everything, it becomes not cool no more. And that's the problem with wrestling. So, going back to the question, dubbing this the greatest wrestling match ever, maybe that's their way to be like, well, we're going to have this match and we're going to make sure people remember it. Like, because most of the time people only remember matches that happen at WrestleMania. They remember matches that happen at SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and Rumble. If I asked you what happened at Extreme Rules 2017, what was the main event? You probably aren't able to tell me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's
Most
not like,
likely, yeah.
Yeah, well, if I asked you what happened at Backlash 2004, you might, because it was still a little less back then. There was less, but now there's too much, and there's too many things we don't remember, and there's good matches on Raw. This is the thing about the Attitude Era. And once again, I'm a character storyline guy, and this is why I get in fights with people like Devin on the show, because I'm like, you guys don't get it. Like, Raws and SmackDowns aren't supposed to be for 5-star, 4-star, 3-star classics. They're supposed to be for quick matches and promos and building the storylines and building the characters. So you go to the pay-per-view and you get the great matches. Maybe once a month you'll get like a banger, or once every 2 months you'll get a banger on a Raw. Don't get me wrong, let's look at the year like 1994. There's a bunch of Raws. Most of them were just promos or build-ups to shows, quick squash matches, quick matches and stuff. Every once in a blue moon you'll get like a Bret Hart versus a 1-2-3 kid. But you remember it because it doesn't happen every week or every other week. The problem now is we're too focused on having so much great wrestling. We want great wrestling matches. Oh, this is boring if it's not great wrestling. The reason people, when I post stuff on my page, people don't remember the matches. They get hyped because they see Stone Cold coming on a beer truck and the moments and things like that. Moments and characters. Once you invest in them, then you'll care about the crappy matches too. It's just weird because we've turned into a generation where like we care about the fake fighting in the ring. Don't get me wrong, I love it too. I love a good wrestling match as much as anybody else. We care about that more. That needs to be good, and we don't care about anything else. But the problem is, if that's just good, nothing matters. You need the people to matter. You need moments to matter. You want to rally behind somebody. You want to care, and then those will be better. You know. Like the wrestlers that I care about, the matches I care about more. There's so many good people on SmackDown. There's Cesaro, there's Shinsuke, there's Sheamus, there's Mustafa Ali, there's Chad Gable, there's all these talented people on SmackDown. But the only people I care to see because I enjoy them as a character and a wrestler, I'm invested in them, is like Bray Wyatt and Sasha Banks. There's all these good people, but they've done nothing for their characters for me to give a crap. Why would I care about what Cesaro or Shinsuke is doing? They were hanging out with Sammy, and now they're just like hanging around. Tremendous wrestlers are probably one of them. I guarantee you, if I look back, I can think of matches off the top of my head. Cesaro probably had a bang with Gulak a few weeks ago or something. Probably did. I remember they wrestled each other. It was probably a great match. To me, it means nothing 2-3 weeks later. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
It does.
It does, and like Gulak, right? I think he recently got released, so it's like
He's
Yeah,
back.
that match happened. That was great. And now let's just go on to something else.
But like, you know what? Like, for example, you know what I'm gonna remember. So Drake Maverick, right? Spud, he gets released, right? I love Spud. He's an amazing dude. And you know what? The reason why I love Spud too is because that whole 24/7 title thing, where he got to be a character and a personality, won the people over. So Spud gets released, right? And he does this whole cruiserweight tournament thing, and the matches he's had on NXT have been great. They've been good matches. But what 5-10 years from me, what I'm not gonna remember those matches. I'm gonna remember, yo, this guy got released. He was in this tournament. He had really good matches, and by the end of it, they gave him a contract. What a story! What a great thing for Drake Maverick. That's what I'm gonna remember. I'm not gonna sit there and be like, but that match with Phantasma, or that match with this, that's not.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong, and that's the way I think of things. But I'm not that person that's gonna remember those matches. I'm gonna remember the moment and what happened to the person because he's a great person. He's a great character that I'm invested in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, people don't remember Backlash 2000 for The Rock and Triple H having a great match. They remember Stone Cold coming out helping The Rock, and that will make people remember that match for the rest of time. Because
Yeah,
people remember moments. People remember moments. They don't sit there and remember matches. Dave Meltzer remembers matches, but Dave Meltzer's a mark. So, like, like the bad kind that sits there and judges matches and transitions and how smoothly things work, even though he's never laced his boots in his life. That's people that care about matches. And because of him, people care about matches. And on that point, not to be that guy, he kind of ruined wrestling for people in many different ways by letting us know things, killing surprises, and rating matches where people take his word for gospel, because that's not like, judge it yourself. Some matches he might think is 5-star, I might think was a little long and boring. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Everyone has a different taste, right? Like,
yeah.
some might have it rated well. Like, you might enjoy a match and might not be that great in other people's eyes. So I guess that's what the whole fandom thing about it is, right?
So to my point, though, them billing this as the greatest match ever, we will always remember because the stupid tagline that they tried to bill it as. So if it lives up kind of to the hype, we'll remember it. If it doesn't, we'll still remember it because of the stupid tagline. And that's what they did. Because nobody was going to remember the Edge and Orton rematch in Backlash in 2020 and 2024. They'll probably just remember the last man standing match at WrestleMania. And, oh, yeah, they wrestled a couple times after that, too. But now with this stupid tagline, which I think we can all agree is stupid, we're not going to forget it. You get what I mean? Because they're smart. They get people to remember it.
And if it's a dud, right, then people will say, oh, that wasn't the greatest wrestling match because...
Do you remember the greatest match ever that was a dud? They gave us a reason to remember it. Because if they just had another match that was a regular match, we might not have. And that's why. Because we're spoiled with too much good wrestling. And you don't creatively book things to make us care. So they creatively booked this. So as bad as it sounds, you got to give them credit because it worked.
Here with Justin Dhillon of the Wrestling Classic and TWC show on video. Justin, you know, through your page, you got to see a lot of wrestling legends, a lot of wrestlers, like you mentioned, interview them. Bret Hart, I know you talked about this before in the past, a Canadian legend here in Canada. What was it like meeting Bret Hart?
So first things first, shout out to Wrestling for Sale. He just dropped all this like dope vintage Bret Hart merchandise that is like from the 90s, and I just bought this shirt from 1995, a Bret Hart shirt from 1995. It's a vintage tee. It's dead stock. I just bought it from him, and it was the same shirt I had as a kid in a small. And I don't know where that shirt went. So when he posted and I saw that shirt, I'm like, do you have that in a large? He's like, yes. I'm like, I'm buying it. Because that's literally the exact same shirt I had when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I don't know what happened to it. And so when I saw it, I'm like, I'm buying it. He's like, dude, that's dope. So check out Wrestling for Sale, guys, for some vintage merch because there's some crazy stuff on there. This shirt, too, I actually got from him, this Macho Man shirt from 1998. But anyways, yeah, no, I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of wrestlers and stuff. And I think, as I was mentioning before, like, you know, 2016, I realized there's opportunities there. Like, I'll say what happened in 2014 and 2015 that really boosted my confidence was a ton of wrestlers did follow me. Like, you know, Brett followed, then Flair followed, then Hogan, like, and then, you know, then all the younger wrestlers like Charlotte and Natty and Kelly and Summer Rae, like all these people started following me, and I didn't know why. I was like, oh, this is sweet. And you know, being a big Brett fan, you know, the whole Hart family started following me slowly because I guess like right off the bat they kind of realized like, oh, he's a big Brett fan, And like Dallas and Blade and Bret's daughters, and then the nieces, and then like everyone slowly just eventually started following me. And I know Natalia used to repost a lot of my posts. Like I used to like find really rare pictures. Like that's how you gotta understand. When I started the Wrestling Classic, there was no videos, there was no stories, not even 15-second clips. It was just pictures. So I would go find like the rarest pictures, and I found like Stu Hart wrestling like a tiger. I'd find like vintage old school Hart family pictures where they were even like, yo, we haven't seen this picture in years, or where did this come from? And Natty would be reposting them and this and that. Now you see these same pictures floating all over the place, and like new pages that post classic pictures. Like you still my picture, I'm like, dude, I was posting that stuff in like 2014, like chill. But like now these pictures are floating. Anyways, the whole Hart family started following me. Dallas, Blade, his sons, Natty, like Bianna, all of them. And like to the point where last year in New York at WrestleMania weekend, the night before Hall of Fame, me and my buddy were having dinner with the entire Hart family in the hotel, and just super, like, what I mean? Like that's how far we've come. But let's rewind. So Bret is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. He's my top three. You can swift them around. It's him, Taker, and Macho Man. Macho Man captured my imagination. I don't think I'd be a wrestling fan if there wasn't a Macho Man, because I'm like, yo, this guy's so weird, and he's the man. And everything he did, I was so intrigued. Undertaker, same thing, captured my imagination. He was Purple Glove Dead Man when I first started watching live on TV, and just anytime I was on TV, I wanted to see what the Undertaker doing. Bret was my hero. Bret was like a real person. Like those two were like weird, like crazy people that just captured my attention. But Bret was like a real person. He was like a real life superhero, and he was like just cool. Like he was the Fonzie of wrestling. Like he was Canadian cool. He was one of the best wrestlers, and being someone that was a kid and highly influenced in wrestling from the 1996, 97, 98 years, like the Hart Foundation, and leading up to things like, I sent them shirts, and like on Thanksgiving 2000, like I think it was like 2015, like Bret, Blade, and Dallas took a picture, and they're all wearing the Wrestling Classic shirts, and they put me over on Bret's Instagram page, and all of that was cool. But I hadn't met Bret properly. So like I went to go meet Bret when I was probably like 5 or 6 years old with my brother and my mom at like a Dunkin' Donuts, and I didn't meet him because I was so nervous and I cried. Like my mom was holding me, and I just cried the entire time, and my brother and my Bret. So I never got to meet him. Like I never had that like take a picture with him, shake hands. Like I was like just scared. And that's when I was like 6, right? So never met Bret. Now I'm friends with like his sons. Like, his sons come to Vancouver. I take him out on the town. Like I'm so close to everybody in the family. Still have never met Bret. But he knows who I am. Like, I even got him to give a shout out to one of my best friends who got married or engaged. I was like, I asked his wife, do you think we can get like a shout out for them? She's like, yeah, for sure, we'll do anything for you. And they got a shout out for him while he was on a Wrestling Classic show. Like, that's just so nice to me. So WrestleMania 34 New Orleans, I wasn't planning to go. Sheamus was trying to help me out with some stuff. I took a last minute flight to New Orleans. I slept on the floor of a hotel room with my buddies because there was already like 4 of them in there in 2 beds. And I was like, yo, let me just crash with you guys. It's too late for me to book a hotel, and everything's so expensive because it's like the weekend of. And they're like, okay, cool. You can crash with us. Don't worry about pitching in. Just make sure there's beer in the room the entire time. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll make sure there's beer in the room at all times. So I went and crashed with these guys, party with them, whatever. And then I was like, okay, Saturday morning, I might have to do media row. So you guys go do your thing. I'm going to get ready. I suited up, got all the stuff ready, this and that. And then Sheamus hit me back up, and he's like, yo, I'm getting some pushback. I don't think I'll be able to get you in. So I unsuited, doing a Wrestling Classic shirt, doing my Bret Austin chalk line jacket from WrestleMania 13. I was like, okay, I guess I'll just go to WrestleCon where my buddies went. And I'm like, I'll just hang out with them and go to WrestleCon too. And I was supposed to meet AJ there for some vintage tea thing. I was like, I'll just go to WrestleCon. Was not planning to go to WrestleCon. Never was my intention was to go to WrestleCon. But I went to WrestleCon. And, I got in. Danielle Monet, aka Summer Rae, like we're friends. She saw me, was supposed to swap shirts. She got me in. She's like, just let him in. Like, da-da-da. I'm like, okay, sweet. So I got in there. I was roaming around, doing my thing. And, I'm here. I might as well make the most out of it. That was 2018. Ric Flair had that scare in 2017. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go meet Rick. Went and met Ric Flair. That was super cool. His wife remembered my page. I sent them shirts and stuff too. I've helped them out with content and whatnot back in the day. So that was super cool. And then I went met Bischoff and a bunch of other people. And Bret's line was like super long. Like it was really longer than Flair's line. Like Bret's line was really, really long. And I didn't even know he was actually there. Like, I didn't know who was actually there that day. Like, I just kind of showed up, and I walked by, and I was like, Bret, and I was like, and I kind of showed him my shirt. He's like, oh yeah, your shirt. Yeah. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna come up. So I went and stood in line, and I'm standing in line, and it didn't even connect in my head. The guy behind me is like, yo, like, you should get your Bret Hart shirt signed, or the jacket signed. And I'm like, oh, that's a really great idea. I forgot I was wearing a Bret Hart Austin jacket, right? I was like, didn't even click in my head. And they're like, oh, you should get that signed. I'm like, all right, cool. And then Bret kept getting up and leaving and coming back. And at one point he came back and he walked by me, and I was like, oh, you keep leaving, like, jokingly, right? And he's like, he pulled me out of the line, he took me right to the front.
Wow.
And then he sat there and he's like talking to me like, yo, Justin, like, thanks for taking my kids out when they came. Like, he like was talking to me like he knew me. And in my mind, I'm like, yo, this is so crazy. So when I was 6, I went to go meet this guy. And I cried, and I have an empty, non-signed 8x10 because I never got it signed. And I was so like scared to meet my hero. Like, this is Bret Hart. And now I'm sitting here. He pulled me on the line. He took me to the front. He's talking to me like he's known me for years. Like, it was so like full circle. You know what I mean? I was like,
that's crazy.
Like, and now like that was when I was like 5'6". Now I'm like 26, 27. I'm like, this is weird. This is like 20 years in the making. Did not think this was ever gonna happen. And this all happened because of the wrestling classic. Like, that's nuts. Like, you know, like, and he like took his time with me. He like I guess they're like contractually only like they're contractually only supposed to sign just their name and hand it off. Like, they're not supposed to sign extra stuff. He signed his name. The lady tried pulling the jacket. He's like, no. And he was like, best match ever. And then we talked for a little bit, and I left. And then like it was just weird because I'm like, for me, when I left, I'm like, yo, that's so crazy. Like, I went to go meet this guy when I was 6, and I cried, and I never met him. Like, I literally still have a non-signed empty 8x10 that was supposed to get signed that day. But I just have the 8x10 that never got signed. My brother has one that's signed and stuff to him, but like, I have one that's not signed. Now I have, like, I met him and like he knows who I am. Like, it's so weird. Like, it's not like me going to meet him and being stressed. Like, he's like, oh dude, it's you. You're the wrestler. Like, come to the front. Like, what are you doing? Like,
wow.
I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it's just crazy. It's crazy. That's one of the cooler stories. And then it's funny because I actually met him last year again at a Q&A thing he was doing here in Vancouver. And like, we're so casual that like we were talking about mattresses. And then I remember I told that story on the show, and I'm like, yeah, the last time we met, we talked about mattresses. Like, it's gotten that far that you guys know each other well, so you guys are talking about mattresses. I'm like, yeah, it's weird, right? It's weird.
Wow. Like, who would have thought that? Like, when you're 6 years old, 7 years old, and fast forward 20 years, you're talking about mattresses. That's crazy.
Well, this company wanted to do something with me, like a thing, and they wanted to know if I could get Bret involved. And I was like, because I'm like, oh, this mattress company. They're like, we'll send you a free mattress, and we'll send. I'm like, well, listen. I'm like, I can probably see they want to get involved, but they're probably gonna want to get paid, or like send them a free mattress. And I hit up Bret's wife and like, hey, are you guys interested in a mattress? And then they sent him a free mattress, and they had that mattress all day. And they were like, and then Bret did an ad on the mattress and stuff. And I set all that up and everything. And so that's why we were talking about mattresses. Like,
that's cool.
Conversation.
Okay.
It was more like, oh, how was that mattress? Do you really like it? And we just had like a whole conversation about mattresses and like the differences between his old one and that one, and what's different about it. It seems like random, but it's really not that random because there's a whole story behind why we were talking about mattresses. But it's funny when I was like, yeah, the last time we talked about mattresses. Like, yeah.
With Justin Dhillon here, with Dash Radio and Wrestling Classic. So in AEW now, Cody Rhodes, TNT champion, he recently put out a challenge, I guess, to non-AEW wrestlers to challenge him for the TNT belt. And when I first heard that, I was thinking, is he really challenging, like, you know, wrestlers from other promotions? And if that's the case, who do you think should challenge him for the TNT championship?
I actually asked this question on a post the other day, and I got some really cool answers that I didn't even really think about. Like, immediately for me, I was like, Marty. Like, I want Marty Scurll to be like, I'm a big Marty Scurll fan. Like, more than any of those other guys that are in the Bullet Club or whatever, the Elite, whatever you want to call them. Like, I like Kenny. I don't love Kenny. I like Kenny. I think Kenny's good. He's not the greatest. Hangman Page has grown on me since the whole AEW launch. I think him as a character and a person, he's grown on me now more than I did care about him before. I'll always like the Young Bucks. Like, I am a Young Bucks fan. I'm like, I always appreciate the Young Bucks, and I really do like Cody. But Marty wasn't my guy that I was the biggest fan of. Like, I was a big Villain fan. So when he didn't come with these guys when AEW started. It was kind of a letdown. But I get what he's doing in Ring of Honor, and I get the power he has in, that's a place where he can shine and, do a lot of cool things. But to see him come and face Cody, and I mean, it's possible. Like, we had that little exchange with Jeff Cobb coming from Ring of Honor for 2 episodes to just kind of get some exposure and, dip his toe in the AEW water. I love Marty, but a lot of people were coming up with some really cool answers, man. I don't know, if they got the opportunity to get guys from Japan, a one-off between Cody and Okada, I'm game.
Yeah.
A one-off with Cody and Tanahashi, I'm game. A one-off with Cody and Zack Sabre Jr. or Will Ospreay, let's do it. And there's all those guys that just got released. So obviously, eventually you can have a Cody versus Zack Ryder or Matt Cardona or whatever we're calling him now. There's a lot of cool names you can go with. Personally, and still on the Ring of Honor thing, there's Marty, there's Flip Gordon, there's a bunch of people there that they, Brody King, that they could bring in to have Cody facing a one-off. They could bring Jeff Cobb back for a one-off. There's a ton of talent out there, and I think sometimes, I will highly agree when people say in the last 5 years, it seems like anytime someone gets hot, WWE snatches them up and puts them on a development thing, and they kind of just flounder there. But if they are open to every other company besides WWE, if wrestling's proved everything, they've done a really good job of continuously producing stars when it seems like there's no stars in the independents no more because they all got signed. That whole raid when Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and all these guys were getting signed, a whole new crop came after. And then when Ricochet and Tommy End and all those guys got signed, a whole new crop came after, and it's going to keep happening. So I think there's a ton of people out there. There's a ton of people in MLW that I'd like to see. Imagine getting Hammerstone in there with Cody, or Davey Boy Smith Jr. with Cody. Other matches that would be tremendous. Flying Brian coming out there for a one-off with Cody. I'm with it,
Yeah, that'd be great.
So there's a lot of names. I don't know. What about you guys? Who do you guys want to see? I just named almost a lot of guys.
For me, I've been thinking about if Rusev wants to go to AEW, I think he could challenge Cody for the belt, and then, if he were to go back, then if he would go to AEW, then they could always do, how Rusev was in WWE in his early years with the whole Bulgaria thing, Bulgaria, Bulgaria versus the U.S. kind of thing with Cody Rhodes. So I think that would be a worthy opponent.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Rusev, I think, would be perfect, especially the kind of guys they signed. We saw Brian Cage, a bigger guy, come in, and I think Rusev, like Aaron was saying there, I think that's a perfect addition to AEW. So I'm with him on that.
It's also kind of hard because that a lot of these guys that are coming in, and if it is a one-off, they're obviously not going to win, and then also unless it's going to turn into a long-term storyline, at some point Cody's going to have to be immersed in some sort of angle, and having the one-offs isn't going to help all the time. And they already got a pretty stacked roster. What do we had Jungle Boy this week. Next week's Isaiah Cassidy, or Quinn. I don't know which one it is that he's actually facing from Private Party, but there's a lot of guys in that own roster you could face too. I was even joking around when they were having the Battle Royal. I'm I'd be down to have Cody versus Billy Gunn for 1 week. Why not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why not?
Yeah,
What's wrong with that? Let's have Cody versus Billy Gunn. Let's do it. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and a non-AEW wrestler is Mike Tyson, who has gotten under the skin of Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
Do you see a match happening between them?
Spider Fest. I don't. This is the thing, and Jericho's capable of doing this. It's giving me really big Mr. T, Roddy Piper vibes. WrestleMania 2. These guys can have a boxing fight. These guys can box. I can see Tyson boxing Jericho, and Jericho thinking he can box. Jericho's the type of character that would be he would immerse the boxing culture and act like he's the greatest boxer ever. I can see him doing vignettes with Sammy Guevara in the inner circle, training like Rocky. I think you could go the route, because I don't want to see Tyson wrestle. I don't think anybody wants to see Tyson wrestle. But if Tyson has to throw on boxing gloves, and Jericho throws on boxing gloves, and you have Jake Hager as the guy in the corner pumping him up, and Sammy, there's something there. And it could end the exact same way Piper and Mr. T did. Ends up slamming Tyson and turns into a brawl or something, and it ends up being nothing. But I think there's gonna be some sort of confrontation. If it was up to me, I would definitely go the boxing route, and I think it would be hilarious the weeks leading up to it, because the inner circle and Chris Jericho prepping to box Mike Tyson with all the confidence in the world. like training and drinking bubbly at the same time. Like just, doing silly things that only Chris Jericho can do.
Just, I guess, a final question for me, Justin. This page and all the fandom that's coming in. What's like an era of wrestling that you usually go towards, or notice your fans really giving you the best feedback when you post pictures and stuff, and maybe past legends that you say follow you? What's the era that everybody seems to enjoy the most?
It's really different because my younger followers really like, and I don't post it that often, which is weird too. But my younger followers do get a kick when I post things from like the mid 2000s, like Evolution time forward, which is weird for me because I was like a teenager and kind of an adult at that time, and even though I was watching, like those memories don't stick with me as well as like the stuff I grew up with as a kid, which is weird. But like if you ask me something that happened in 2007, 2008, 2006, like I remember, but it's like less meaningful to me because I was kind of grown up at that point. Whereas like when I post something from like 97 or the year 2000, like that means a lot to me because that was my stuff. That was the stuff that got me hooked. I think a lot of the older people, a lot of the older wrestlers and the veterans and stuff like that, they love it when I post stuff from the 90s and the 80s. That's their stuff. They love the old Ric Flair promos from Jim Crockett and Mid-South and stuff like that. They love they love the Hogan stuff. They love the Warrior stuff because that's what they grew up on. And I think that's the whole point, is that people love the stuff that they grew up on as a kid more than the current stuff, more than the stuff that happened when they were teenagers. The stuff that they grew up with as a kid, they loved. Like I always say 1997 is probably the best year in wrestling because that's what like I was a kid and I was so into it. WCW was great, WWF was great. There was so much. Like if I put on the network, if I threw something on from 1997, I'd be content. You know what I mean? Like I love that year. Either show.
Monday Night Wars, big thing.
Just like Sting in the NWO, Heart Foundation, DX, Stone Cold, Undertaker, Mankind. Like it was just so much cool stuff happening all at once, And then you had the Cruiserweight division, Eddie Guerrero guys and Rey Mysterio guys ripping it up in '97 and stuff. So like '97 was just a solid year. After that, it wasn't bad or anything. It just WWE became way more raunchy. WCW started losing themselves. You know what I mean? Like it was so cool, but I think obviously Austin Rock stuff from 2000, 99, 98, 97 always gets a lot of love. NWO stuff always gets a lot of love. Red and Yellow Hogan from the 80s, Flair promos. And then for the younger fans, they love when I'm posting, CM Punk stuff, Edge stuff, Randy Orton stuff. Evolution, people love Evolution. It just, it really depends. It's hard to narrow it down because like my demographics 18 to 34, but there's a lot of young people that follow me too, and they love that stuff that's like more current. Like if I post Punk cashing in at Money in the Bank 2011, like that's what people remember from their childhood now. Which reminds me that I've gotten older because I was like, I think 18, 19 at that point, or 17 or 2011. No, I was definitely like 20, 21 at that point. Like, and it's different for me. Like I always look at that period and like I always say that Summer Punk's what got me back into WWE content, but like I don't look at it the same way. I look at like how I remember Kane making his debut. Like that'll always be special because I was a kid, man.
Yeah.
So I think for everybody, it's what the stuff you saw as a kid is the stuff you're like, whoa, like.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
Yeah, for me, growing up watching wrestling, one of the cool moments for me was the Hell in the Cell match between Undertaker and Mankind.
Yeah.
Where just like Undertaker, he throws Mankind off the cage, and then they go back on the cage. So Undertaker throws him through the cage into the ring. It was just so fun.
And now call back to what we were talking about like half hour ago. Wasn't the greatest match, but it was a moment, and you're gonna remember it forever. We don't have moments anymore. We have too many great matches, and that's not a bad thing. But if there's too many great matches, nothing stands out.
Right, in this whole day and age with social media, right, it's about those viral moments that that will live on, right, for the days and years to come.
And you think we'd have more of them, but we don't. We have more great matches than we do have viral moments. And you want to know a viral match that I remember because it was so polarizing was Will Ospreay versus Ricochet in Japan and all those things because they were doing those choreographed Power Ranger type of things. We all remember that because it was weird and it was different. That's what wrestling doesn't have anymore. Everything is so like the same. Just really good wrestling is great, but if it's all really good wrestling, nothing stands out. I go back to that again. Like, if everyone's having great matches, like, and it's not on an event that seems super special. Like it's like if it's on Dynamite every week, you're having good matches on Dynamite. 100 episodes into Dynamite, we're gonna forget a lot of the good matches that happen. I've already forgotten good matches that happen on Dynamite. I'm sure there's been a few bangers. I don't remember. Like, you know? Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I got a question for you guys really quickly. Now that you brought up that kid, excluding the Hell in the Cell, excluding Undertaker and Mankind Hell in the Cell, now because we already talked about it, I always get curious because I also strongly believe it's if I was sitting there with a non-wrestling fan, right?
Yeah.
Non-wrestling fan doesn't watch wrestling. Just my buddy or something, but I'm watching wrestling, and he's like, "Oh yeah, fine, I'll watch it with you. It's cool." I'm like, it's really hard to describe wrestlers today because not all wrestlers have characters. Like I used to say, babyface Seth Rollins before he was the Messiah. Now I can describe it. When he was on that babyface burn it down thing, I'm like, how would you describe Seth Rollins to someone who's not a wrestling fan? And you can't use the words. Wait, and you can't use the words. You can't use any of his nicknames. You can't use Kingslayer or any of that stuff. And you can't use he's a really good wrestler. How do you describe him? Babyface Seth Rollins. You can't say his nicknames and you can't say he's a really good wrestler. You have to describe him as a character.
Describe him as a character. But can you make a comparison? Huh?
I guess. But then you're really just describing the other character because that means that person had a really good character.
Right.
True.
Do the same thing with AJ Styles. I love AJ Styles. I love Seth Rollins, but you can't use his nicknames. You can't say phenomenal or nothing, and you can't say he's a really good wrestler. Who is AJ Styles?
I think AJ Styles is a guy kind of revolutionary for his time because when he came in, some of these aerial offensive moves he adapted to bigger guys like Samoa Joe. So
you would do good describing him, but that's not a character. His aerial moves.
That's true. I guess a guy with charisma who can
describe
untapped potential.
If I'm describe Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's a beer drinking, ass kicking. He's anti-authority. He's anti-establishment. Describe Triple H. He's this guy. He's power hungry. He's always wanted to be the best. Like he'll do whatever it takes. He's put himself in groups. He's like he'll have people help him win. Like whatever it does for him to stay on top. Even going as far as marrying the boss's daughter. Like you can describe Triple H. You know what I mean? Describe Shawn Michaels, describe Bret Hart. You can describe these people. Bret Hart is a fighting champion. He wants to be the best. He'll wrestle anybody. He'll defend his title whenever. It's real to him. Like he wants he wants to be the best wrestler out there. Not that he's a great wrestler. He wants to be that's his character. There's characters today. There really is. Like I look at Roman Reigns, and for me, if someone's like, "Who's this guy?" I'm like, he's like a badass Samoan. He's just like Bray Wyatt. He's a character. But there are a lot of guys that don't feel like they have characters. Is that not true? And I'm like, you can't say a really good wrestler. Like, what is Ricochet's character?
Yeah, I agree. You actually just touched on that too, because it's kind of like in this age of pro wrestling, there's not character driven anymore. It's basically most on, this guy can do a couple dives here and there. But 10, 15 years ago, you can mention a character like you brought up Triple H, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. So that's a huge difference in the industry and how it adapted in the last 20 years. One of the most
successful wrestlers in the past 20 years that almost everybody universally knows, The Undertaker. His whole thing was a character. He never put on 5-star matches. Nobody cared about his matches. They did, but not to that extent. You know what I mean?
It's just the character, the mystique.
Yeah, and I think there's too much. Going back to my main thing, there's too much emphasis on wrestling, because there's too many people on the internet having opinions, and they love the wrestling part for some reason. They love. It's like going to a movie and caring more about how good the acting is than what the characters are in the movie. Wow, Robert Downey Jr. played a really good Iron Man. He's really good at playing that. He did a really good job in that one scene where he was going back and forth with this. But no, you care about Iron Man, the character, and what happens to him in this movie. Wrestling's changed because we're sitting here and we're worrying about the conversation they're having and the acting they're doing over the actual characters. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's why I think sometimes it's hard to sell wrestling to people these days, because I can be sitting with a friend that's never watched it, and it could be Andrade versus Drew McIntyre. Well, Drew McIntyre kind of has a character, but those two people, and I can't really describe who these people are. You know what I mean? I can't tell you. They're two really good wrestlers. It's gonna be a really good match. They want to fight for the title. That's not an interesting story that somebody wants to hear.
Right, because now it's becoming more blurred of the actual, their persona and who they actually are. That's getting more blurred now, where it's you look in the women's side, Alexa Bliss, the the way she portrays herself on TV, that's kind of how she is behind the scenes, right? So it's more I guess.
I'm not saying there isn't characters. I think they've done really good with the women. I think the women have had characters and personalities. The women's division, and like I said, there are standouts. Like Roman is sort of a character. The Messiah right now is a character. Seth's current character is a character. Like this guy thinks he's like a preacher, Messiah. Like he's all like this religious leader, cult leader guy. Like he's a character now. But like Bray Wyatt's one. The New Day, their characters. Like I'm not saying there isn't. Like Drew McIntyre, you can tell the whole story about how he was here and he was the chosen one, and now he finally made it. Now he's going to defend it because he's a prodigy. Like there are characters, but in a lot of senses, I'm like, there is a lot of places where you're watching something though, like you don't know how to describe it to people, and it's happened a lot throughout the years. And it's like, and that leads me to my next question. Like, if you were going to watch wrestling with a wrestling fan or someone who's not a wrestling fan, but you had to show them a match from the last 5 years, like what match would you show them to get them into wrestling? And I mean, back in the day, you'd be like, oh, I'd show them Hell in a Cell, Undertaker, Mankind. Oh, I'd show them TLC at WrestleMania. I'll show them this match. I'll show them Rock and Austin. Like, you'd show them something that, I'll show them Savage and Warrior from WrestleMania 7 because all the storyline, the emotion. I'll show them Bret and Austin. Like, in the last 5 years, what match would you show a non-wrestling fan to try to get them into wrestling?
That's the last 5 years. That's
tough.
Yeah, 2015 to now. So that even rules out Punk and Cena, Money in the Bank. In the last 5 years, I mean, there's some that come off the top of my head, but I think at that point you kind of already have to be a wrestling fan to care. Because I can sit there and be like, Kofi and Daniel Bryan, but I also think like you have to be a wrestling fan to really care.
Yeah, because that's the story. Going into I agree with that.
Like you have to nerdy know the people. Like if someone's never watched and you're gonna show them wrestling,
right?
What are you gonna show them?
I remember WrestleMania 31.
Okay.
The match between Randy Orton and Seth Rollins.
Great match.
That was a pretty good match.
But would that get someone who's not a wrestling fan into it? Like, would they care about that RKO as much as we did? Maybe the main event with Brock and Roman, because a lot of non-wrestling fans know Brock. And then when Seth came to cash in at the end, I was like, whoa, what just happened here? That could work.
Right.
I would even go as far as maybe like this little stadium stampede. It wasn't technically not a wrestling match, but it was something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was like that was more like comedic wrestling.
Yeah, that's something where maybe somebody would want to be like, remember that guy that was doing that? Like, I want to watch that guy that came on the horse again. What is he doing now? Like, that would get someone into like those characters.
Right.
Like, there is stuff. Yeah, maybe the Boneyard match. There is stuff. So listen, I'm not sitting here trying to discredit saying there isn't anything. There is. I just think it's harder to think about now. Because wrestling's come to a point where it's so focused on just the wrestling that there's less moments. We're bringing up moments. We're bringing up the cash-in. We're bringing up the RKO. We're bringing up the stadium stampede. There is moments, but there's so much wrestling that there's less moments. Like, I don't even know what happened on Raw this past week. Did anything happen that was like, oh my God, a single thing?
No.
From this Monday, not
nothing.
Not really.
Like, was there anything that stood out to you? Like, wow, I'm so glad I was there for that. Like, no, man. SmackDown, okay, they did that little Jeff Hardy thing. I think I'll remember that for a bit. They're trying to create a moment there, like, whatever. But other than that, like, it's moments, right? I just think I wish there was more emphasis on character development, storytelling, and moments and promos. Because if I was saying anything about my page, that's a lot of the stuff that people love. When I post those old Flair promos, those old Hogan promos, those old, Bret Hart Taker promos back in the day, Austin promos, Rock promos, that's what people get hyped for. That's the ones that's sending to all their friends. A lot of people aren't sending their friends a 10-minute wrestling match to watch on my page. Because a lot of people didn't care about the wrestling. And that's the truth of it. When wrestling was at its highest peak in the late 90s, it wasn't because of the wrestling. Watch Raw from 1998 to 99. The wrestling sucked.
Yeah.
It was the most...
It's more of the entertainment now, right? It's more of the entertainment.
Yeah, it was at this peak because the characters and the stories was so over and people just had to see what Stone Cold Steve Austin was going to do. People just had to see what The Rock was going to say. People just had to see what type of carnage the NWO was going to cause. Was Sting going to come from the rafters? Was The Undertaker going to come from under the ring? They had to see these things. I could miss Raw or SmackDown any week and watch the highlights later, and I won't ever feel like I missed anything that's so groundbreaking that I'm like, oh man, I wish I was live to watch that. Because it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon. Happens once. It does happen once in a blue moon. I think when Edge showed up at the Rumble, that was one of those moments you're like, wow. But it happens once in a while.
Yeah. I agree.
Kind of like reaction, right? That pop, we're like, oh wow, it's like, because nowadays, right, the surprises kind of get lost with all the media and rumors and everything. But that was one of those moments where it's like, like a huge surprise.
That
Yeah.
was fun.
So like I'm looking at something like I don't want anyone to listen to this and be like, oh, look, it does happen, but it's so rare compared to what it was, and there's too much focus on wrestling, which I love wrestling. Trust me, guys, I love a good wrestling match as much as the next guy. I mean, but what do half of them even mean? Some of the best matches, Warrior and Savage from WrestleMania 7. If you strip away the characters and you strip away the story of retirement and you strip away the Elizabeth thing at the end, wasn't a good match. But you were so invested in the story. You were so invested with Elizabeth sitting at ringside. You were so invested that one of these guys was going to be retired. You were so invested in the characters. Like, Savage was a big name. Warrior was a big popular name. That we sat there and when Warrior was talking to his hands, we bought into it. Because that's what the Warrior does. He's talking to the Warrior. Like, we believed. We bought into the story, man. Yeah. Hogan never had great matches. But we rallied behind Hogan when he did this and he did this. Like, we wanted to see it happen. Austin wasn't a great wrestler in his peak. He was a great wrestler in WCW. He broke his neck. He was a brawler after that. Tell me if, but we want to watch him kick ass and brawl because we were behind him. And as much as they kept screwing him out of the title, we want to see him get it back.
Yeah, like beat up Vince McMahon and the beer, spray.
I was never huge. I can't, if you told me to name my top 5 favorite Rock matches, and I couldn't mention the ones with Austin, I probably would have a hard time doing it. Like, tell me your top 5 favorite Rock matches, not the ones with Stone Cold.
Hogan, easily number 1.
Oh, no, that's for sure. That's number 1.
Then
I'd probably say Rock and Triple H, Iron Man, but that's more because the moment with Undertaker.
Yeah, they had a few. Like
Rock
and Triple H and The Rock. Yeah,
I was a big. What are the other two? When you can't
Brock
say the ones.
Lesnar.
Well, I know he had
a really good match
against Mankind, Mick Foley.
But once again, those Mick Foley matches, what stood out to you? Was Mick Foley taking these nasty headshots and bumps.
Yeah.
The Rock was never a tremendous wrestler. Even the Hogan match. If you had Rock and Hogan, and rest in peace, Shad Gaspard, because he brought this up on our podcast that we briefly did. So me and Shad did a casual conversation that turned into a podcast because we were in quarantine, and out of nowhere, he's like, why don't we just do this every week? And we'll start a podcast. I got vibe with you. So we started doing it, and we got 5 episodes in. Unfortunately, Shad passed away when drowning in the Venice Beach Ocean out there in California, saving his son. He died a hero. But if you guys want, and you want to listen to Shad's last conversations about stories about Vince McMahon, wrestling, Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, JTG. Like, he talked stories about so many people, current wrestling, former wrestling, and in Hollywood. He talked a lot of stories. You can check that out at NFG Radio, anywhere you listen to podcasts, and on my YouTube channel. But to the point, Shad said, he's like, there's 2 matches. There's 2 kinds of matches, right? There's 2 kinds of things. When you know if someone's a really good wrestler, if they're really good entertainers. You could take all the audience away from Steamboat and Savage, and that would probably still be a really good match. Because they knew what they're going to do, move from you. Like, they choreographed that match. It was going to be a really good match. But if you took the audience away from Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania 18, it's not the same match. You know what I mean? Like,
that crowd added to. I think, it was totally with the crowd that night. I think
the crowd added to it. The crowd made that match. Chanting Hogan, chanting Rock, turning on Rock midway through, and just wanting Hogan to win. Like, the crowd helped tell the story for that match. Where you take a Steamboat and Savage, you can take the crowd away. The Savage already meticulously already put the match together and knew what was going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? Meticulously. Like, he already knew, like, what was going to happen. Where Hogan and they worked off the crowd, and that was off the crowd. So, like, The Rock's not the greatest wrestler, but The Rock was over as hell because he was such a character, and we wanted to hear what he wanted to say. Name one person on the roster that you want to tune in because you can't wait to hear what they're going to say today.
Not many.
No, anyone. Just name anyone.
Today,
you can't wait. Like, today. If you're going to tune in SmackDown, anybody on that SmackDown roster, they're like, I can't wait to tune in and hear this guy cut a promo.
Oh, yeah, cut a promo, no. But wrestle, probably.
Well, Sami Zayn for a while looked like was pretty good, but now he hasn't been.
He's good, but you get hyped. Is that what you look forward to? Like, when Sami Zayn comes out, you're like... And that's also a problem of the promos being way too scripted these days, too, because nobody really sounds like themselves half the time. But... Like, for a point, I think the Firefly Funhouses, everyone was getting excited for those. Yeah. When the Firefly Funhouse came out, like, yeah, sweet. But even that,
when he was on his run as an I think that's one, but they haven't really capitalized on that either. Bray Wyatt, like you mentioned, they're the Fiend, Firefly Funhouse. Other than that, I don't think there's too many.
For a very brief window, there was Becky for a bit, and then she got kind of stale. I'll admit it, that's my hot take. It's not often, man, and that's why I think wrestling's changed. It's too much about the wrestling, less about the entertainment aspect. And then when that happens, you only get stuck with wrestling fans. And I'm saying this in a nice way because I am a wrestling fan. But if you get stuck with just the wrestling fans, you get the biggest complainers. And the biggest group of people that will never be satisfied. But you guys booked yourself into that corner because you didn't get those casual fans or those fans that want the entertainment that don't really even care if the match is great. They're just like, man, I can't wait to see what The Rock says after this. Like you.
And it's like right now at SmackDown, the most interest I'm in seeing, like I guess segment wise, would be Mandy Rose and Otis, because like to me that's a storyline that's kind of getting funny now, but like it was before WrestleMania, it was kind of like invested where it's like, like is she really going to go out with him and this and that, and like with all Dolph Ziggler now and everything.
They fully got us into the characters. Like we got behind Otis. We wanted to see him get that girl.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not that they don't still do it. They do. And I think SmackDown has kind of been doing better at it than Raw at the moment, but like they get us invested in the characters. And even if it's crappy, like, dude, that whole Rusev, Lana, Bobby thing was so crappy, so bad.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember I did an episode of the TWC show right after the big wedding that was like a disaster. And I was like, you know what the craziest thing is that as bad as this has been, we're never gonna forget it. Tell me what matches happened on that Raw. I don't even remember, but I remember that wedding, and we all tuned in because we wanted to see how bad it was going to be. It left us with something because it wasn't about the wrestling. It was about the story, the characters, and a really bad segment. But we're going to remember it. You know what I mean? There was probably like a great match on that show. Maybe Sami Zayn had a banger or something. I don't know. I don't remember. But I remember that damn wedding. You know what I mean? Like, it does matter, and I think it's just that we hear too much from the wrestling fans, and we don't hear that much from the casual fans. Because the wrestling fans are like, well, this sucks. Like, oh my God, why did we just get a main event with Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler wrestling for 30 minutes? Because they've done that 30 times and we don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, Justin, appreciate you taking the time, man. But before we wrap up here, how can our listeners right now follow you on social media, get the best up-to-date stuff about what you're doing right now, and how can they subscribe and tune in?
Be sure to subscribe to the Wrestling Classic on Instagram. That's like the hub for everything. There's reviews on the WrestlingClassic.com every week that a couple of writers write for their own enjoyment. They like doing it, and I kept the site up for them. And it's also kind of a hub because everything I do you'll find on the WrestlingClassic.com too. But the Wrestling Classic Instagram page is like the biggest place to either connect with me or see what's going on or get the first up-to-date stuff. I am on the Twitter. I'm at TWC Worldwide on Twitter. I don't really tweet that often. I'm usually just retweeting stuff or tweeting stuff from my Instagram page to Twitter or sharing the stuff that drops. But occasionally I'll tweet during a show or interact with people like on a random Raw or something to make myself more entertained because Twitter is fun. People get really sour over opinions real fast there. And then make sure you guys, if you can, I really appreciate it, subscribe to the TWC show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, all those places. Subscribe to the TWC show. The show first releases on Saturdays on Dash Radio at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So download the Dash Radio app, on the Dash Talk X channel. Dash Radio app's sick. It's a free app. You get free music. There's a bunch of stations on there, music stations and stuff. Stations where the playlists have been fully picked from like Lil Wayne or Snoop Dogg and stuff like that too. Wow. There's country, there's rock, there's all the genres you can think of, but there's like really specific stations that were curated by really talented people. And there's a lot of cool shows on there, a lot of cool podcasts about life and the Jenna Ben show, Jyoti K show, just anything. Dash Talk X has a lot of good shows, and I'm on Dash Talk X. So once again, I'm on Dash Radio every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, but literally like right after I post the show everywhere else on iTunes and Spotify and everything. So subscribe to us there too. And then please, 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 I've been trying to grow it and trying to make it a little bit more successful. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's The Wrestling Classic. It's literally just The Wrestling Classic. You'll see my logo. All my old interviews with Sheamus, Jinder, Sean Mooney, Rikishi, Darren Young, they're all there. You can stream those and watch those. The first 30 or 32 episodes of the TWC show are recorded on there. Some of them are hilarious. Like if you've never watched or listened to the TWC show, watch some of the panels. We did a panel of 3, like, and I call it a panel. Anytime there's more than 2 of us, I'd call it a panel because I wanted to give it like a panel feeling. And we did one after the 2018 draft, and we did one after Wrestle Kingdom this year, and they were just hilarious because it's a good time. So if you're gonna watch any of them, watch those. And then plus, this quarantine led me to start this whole casual conversation series where I just kind of hop online and talk to people I know. Most recently, I just had Nasty Leroy on there, and if you guys haven't been keeping up with Nasty Leroy in the Janela Zone, you'll hear all about it if you check out my casual conversations. I've had him with Shad Gaspard. I've had him with Darren Young. I've had it with Nug and RJ City and Chris Parsons. I've had it with Mariah May, Joe Alonzo. I've done a lot of these casual conversations. Be sure to check them out. Ambanova. And you can listen to those all on my YouTube channel as well. And yeah, so the YouTube, the Instagram, the Twitter, and subscribing to the TWC show. Do all those things.
Well, thank you, Justin, so much for taking time to talk wrestling and everything else. Take care, stay safe, and wish you and your family all the best, and hopefully we can do this sometime down the road.
Way back to you guys, and hopefully I can come out there and hang out with you guys soon, man. I was supposed to come to Toronto last year for SummerSlam, it didn't work out. Or just Ontario last year, SummerSlam didn't work out, and then I was going to come this year at some point, but, you know, coronavirus. But, yeah.
Yeah, put a hold on a lot of plans.
No, put a damper on my mood. Yeah.
Always. Thanks a lot.